Okay, we're at Memvav Amud Beis, and the Gemara is in the process of demonstrating that there's no way in the world that the Bracha of Atova Meitiv can be Doraisa, and we have a new proof. V'amarav Nachman bar Yitzchak. We're going from the 3 lines down from the bottom of the last row in the line. V'amarav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Taida, I will prove to you that Atova Meitiv lav Doraisa, that Atova Meitiv is not a Torah-originated Bracha. Sher Okrin Oisa Bebeisa Avel. That in a mourner's house there is one opinion, as we're about to see, it's going to be Rabbi Akiva, that deletes it in a mourner's home. Kedesanya, as we learned in the Brisa, Mahem Oimim Bebeisa Avel. What do they say in the benching of a mourner's home? Baruch HaTova Meitiv. The Tanna Kama says, they say the normal Baruch HaTova Meitiv. They just say it. Rabbi Akiva Omer Baruch Dynamis. Rabbi Akiva says no. They substitute a new bracha for HaTova Meitiv called Dynamis, the true judge. That is part 1 of our sugya. Already, part 2 of our sugya is the Gemara's kasha. The Gemara asks, Hatov Meitiv in Dain Emes Loi, in the base of in the mourner's home, do they say Hatov Meitiv yes and Dain Emes not at all? They don't mention it. That doesn't make any sense. The Gemara answers the Gemara answers Ela Ema Af Hatov Meitiv. They say Dain Emes and they say Hatov Meitiv, and the Gemara is about to bring an example of how they make that combo. Part 4. Marazutra Ikla Bei Rav Ashi. Marazutra went to the house of Rav Ashi. Isra Bei Milsa. Something happened. In other words, Rav Ashi lost a relative. Pasach u'barach. So Marazutra opened up and gave the bracha at the end of the meal in the benchim, and he said as follows: Hatova Meitiv. He said the Baruch Hashem Kel Melech Haolam Hatova Meitiv, and then he continued Kel Emes Dayan Emes. True God, true judge, Shofet B'tzedek, who judges justly, Loikech B'mishpat, he takes with justice, V'shalit Ba'olamai, and he rules within his world, La'asos Boiker, to do as is his will. Kichol Drachav Mishpat, all his ways are ways of mercy. Shakol Sheloi, that everything is his. V'anachnu amoy v'avadav, and we are his nation and his servants. U'b'chol anachnu chayavim l'hodei lo, with everything we are obligated to thank him, u'levarcha, and to bless him. Goyder pirtzos b'Yisrael, the one that fences in the breaches of the Israel, hu yigdor es ha'pirtz ha'azos, he will fence in this breach as well, b'Yisrael, amongst the Jewish people, l'chaim, for life. And that is the bracha, that beautiful bracha that is inserted in the base of Avel. As far as I know, there is no such custom today to do this, and the question is, well, why not? And that is the end of that sugya. Now the Gemara goes back to the previous sugya where we said that if there are 2 people eating, and Rashi gives us that reference, if there are 2 people eating, and one of them wants to go before the others have finished eating, so we said that 2 do not stop for 1, 1 stops for 2, unless you really want to honor that person, then even 2 can stop for 1. The question is, once one person has made a zimun in the middle of the meal, the question of the Gemara now is, part 1 is, where does he go back to? When you go back to saying your own benching after you've already made a zimun, at what stage do you return to? And we have 2 opinions. Rav Zvid Mishmei Abai Omar Chayz Rosh. Rav Zvid in the name of Bai says you go back to the beginning and you start with Hazonis Olam Kuloi. Rabbanan Ami Lamakom Shepasik, and the Rabbanan say to the place where the person leading the benching stopped. In other words, you begin the bracha with Noidei Lecha. And we paskin the place where he left off. Now, interestingly enough, this is not how we are noiheg at all. So the question is why, and this goes back to the previous page where there was a massive dispute amongst the Rashi and Tosfos, as does a normal person who's not joining into Mezuman begin benching with Azonis Olam, or does he begin with Noidei Lecha? We paskin otherwise. You'll have to research in the poskim to discover why. And now the Gemara introduces us to the ways of conducting ourselves in a classic Talmudic festive meal, and there's going to be a discussion where Reish Galusa, the exilok, the head of all the exiles, has a discussion with Rav Sheshes, trying to, as it were, demonstrate to him that the Persians have a better way of eating than the Jews, and stay tuned for Rav Shesh's comeback. Says Reish Galusa to Rav Sheshes, even though you're wise and not your elderly rabbis, The Persians, in the needs of a meal, are more learned, educated, expert than you. Which is when they have two people eating and they bring these two couches for them to recline on, Gadol Meisi Barosh. So the more person who's in a higher level, the greater man, as it were, he goes and he reclines first. And the second person then reclines after he's already in a reclining position, and they place the second to the greatest man in a position that's above his couch. And if there are three people, so then you have the couch of the greatest one in the middle, and the the second in the command, as it were, above him, and the person who's third in hierarchy goes beneath him. So it's almost aligned with the greatest one in the middle, the second one on top, and the third one below. So Rav Sheshes says back to the Reish Galusa, so he says, Rav Sheshes, that's really awkward. I mean, you're saying this is such a great way, but what happens if the greatest one wants to speak to the person who's second to him? He has to get up because he can't speak through the couch, as it were. He has to kind of contort his body in order to have a conversation. That doesn't seem to make sense. He said, no, the Persians are different because they speak in sign language, and therefore they don't have to see each other's faces to communicate, and the position of the couches was such that they could see each other's hands. So continues the Reish Galusa and describes how wonderful the Persians are. When they bring in the first waters before they eat, who do they begin from? They begin from the greatest person. So Rav Sheshes counters and he says, Yashav Gadol, Yeshev Gadol v'Yishmar Yadav Ache Noitlin Kulam. What? So the person who's of elevated status, he has to wait for everyone to wash their hands while he says they're doing nothing. Amalei, so looks to reply to Rav Sheshes, La'alta Ma'isutak Kamei. They immediately bring his little table in front of him so he doesn't have to wait for anyone. Okay, says Rav Sheshes, who do they start doing Ma'amachronim, the waters after the meal that they wash their hands? Where do they start from? Amalei Minakoton. They start from the person of the lowest level. So to which Rav Sheshes counters and says, so now the Gadol, the great one, has to wait and his hands are dirty until everyone's washed and then only he gets a chance. Reish Galusa replied, they actually leave the table in front of him so he can continue eating until everyone else has washed ma'amachronim, and then they remove the table from him, give him ma'achronim, so he doesn't have to wait around. Rav Sheshes, good. Now listen, I don't know about the Persians, I know a Brachos. What's a Brachos? Say it to Sanya. Keita said to Haseva, what is the order of reclining? But one change, if there's two couches, so then the great one, he reclines first, and the second to him goes beneath him. In other words, so you can talk to him and conduct a conversation. But if there are three couches, so then they actually do the same as the Persians, where the second in command goes above him and the third beneath him. They begin the first waters from the greatest person. And what about the Ma'amachronim? After the meal when they wash, when there are five people, then they start off, and the greatest man washes his hands first. But if there's 100 people, so then they start with the person of the least stature until they get to 5 before the end of the highest stature. And then when there's 5 left, so then they give the honor to the greatest person to wash within the last 5. And to the person they pick off those last 5 to get first, so that's who benches. Okay, and this is going to act as a support to Rav. And we've had this Gemara before. Any person that washes his hands in the last washing first, meaning ma'amachronim, he is requested to make the bracha Birkas Hamazon. And now we have the story that we also had actually back on the Mem Gimel, V'Rav Rebbe Chia Havu Yasu Sudasa Kame de Rebbe. So Rav and Rebbe Chia was sitting at a meal in front of Rebbe Yehuda Nasi. Amalei Rebbe L'Rav. So Rebbe said to Rav, Kum Mashi Yadech, go wash your hands. Chazi Yadekah Marasis. He saw that Rebbe was trembling. Amalei, this was Rebbe Chia. Amalei Bar Pachti, Ayin Bebirkas Mazona. This Gemara is a little bit of a shift. Previously, in the previous Gemara that we quoted was Rebbe Chia. They said this. This time it's Rav saying it. Rebbe saying it to Rav directly. He saw that Rav was getting worried. I was saying to you, you should go and lead the Birkas Hamazon. I wasn't chastising you for having dirty hands in the meal or eating in an inappropriate fashion. And over here we just see, by the way, this incredible kesha, which relates to Gemara earlier on, that Rav was a Talmid of Rebbe, and that's why he started off in Eretz Yisrael, where Rebbe was the head of the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael, and later on he moved down to Babylon. And that brings to a close Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis. Stay tuned for many more exciting episodes of The Journey Through Shas.